about
It was the media. It was CNN that relentlessly pushed that propaganda. And by the way,
what propaganda? That there was no widespread fraud in the election?
That voter fraud doesn't exist, and anyone who says it does is wearing a tinfoil hat. That is propaganda. And by the way, you never asked Hillary Clinton this. You never asked Stacey Abrams this. You never asked Al Gore this.
With all due respect,
and every
Senator,
one of them said the Republicans who won were illegitimate.
I haven't had any of them on my show. We'll talk to them. But I don't remember there being a president who was refusing to turn over the transition of power and facilitated it.
And Trump didn't either. Joe
My
Biden
question was about 2024.
President.
You did not answer
Let me say a final
Senator
point
Ted
for
Cruz,
you. You said they haven't come.
Thank you very much,
My
Senator
opponent,
Ted
Colin
Cruz.
Allred, hasn't either. He ought to come to your show.
Senator Ted Cruz, no answer to that question. Thank you very much. Much more on that interview and what we touched on.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about this very, very, very heated interview between Ted Cruz and CNN's propagandist for hire, Kaitlan Collins, who is going to ask Ted Cruz, a sitting politician, about some of the most pressing questions dealing with the issues that Americans are facing today. Okay, not inflation, not the border, not crime, not foreign wars overseas. No. Those aren't the pressing issues that the American people are concerned about. According to mainstream liberal media, what they're concerned about is whether or not Republicans are going to accept the outcome of the 2024 election. This is what the mainstream liberal media is concerned about. This is what they are asking Republicans on every liberal media outlet, because, again, all these liberal media outlets work in lockstep with the Democrat Party. They are an arm of the state, and as a result, you see they just ask Republicans all the same thing as a part of an attempt to make the 2024 election about January 6th and what happened in 2020. The reason why they want to do that is because the political persecutions against Trump have fell apart. So therefore, they are desperate, and now they're trying to go back to square one and, again, scream and cry about January 6th and the 2020 election as if election denialism is something that is new. We've never seen that before, except we have seen it for the last 20 years, and a vast majority of it has come from Democrats, but yet they never asked Democrats about their history of denying elections. So, yeah, Marco Rubio was asked about this from Kristen Welker on NBC, and now Ted Cruz is going to get asked about this from Kaitlan Collins on CNN. Let's see how Ted Cruz handles this situation.
The votes. In 2024, will you certify the election results? Do you plan to object, or will you accept the results regardless of who wins the election?
So, Kaitlan, I got to say, I think that's actually a ridiculous question.
It's a yes or no question, though.
No, it's not. Let me explain why it's a ridiculous question. It's not a question. You've ever asked a Democrat that?
Of course.
What Democrats?
But what Democrats?
But hold on a second. What Democrats challenge it?
What Democrats? I know. I've been down this road many times. But no Democrat. You cannot compare the two situations. We have talked about that. We've seen the audio of that when they protested on the Senate floor.
But hold on a second.
But has you ever had a sitting president who refused to facilitate the peaceful transition of power, refused to acknowledge that his successor won the presidency?
Okay, so here's the problem with what Kaitlan Collins is talking about. She's trying to say, well, you can't compare Democrats denying elections to Republicans denying elections in 2020. And that's just completely false, right? That's just not right. And I'm going to tell you guys why it's not right. Because Republicans did not do anything any different on January 6th than what Democrats have done every single time they've lost an election. Now, the difference is that a Democrat president has not lost while he was eligible for a second term, okay? So the Democrat that had to step down, okay, that ended up having a Republican take over after him, he was already termed out for the most part, okay? Bill Clinton, his time was up. Barack Obama, his time was up. But every single time Democrats lost, they denied the results of the election. They claimed that there was voter fraud. They made all types of crazy claims about machines. They made all the same claims that people were making in 2020. The liberal media didn't care because it was understood that as a senator or as a representative, you have a constitutional right to contest the results of the election if you do not feel that the election was conducted fairly and lawfully. But all of a sudden, when Republicans do it, though, in 2020, oh, it's wrong. You can't do that, even though Democrats have been doing it for years. But again, the only difference is that there was not a Democrat running for re-election. There was not an incumbent Democrat running for re-election. He was termed out. Again, imagine what would be the difference if Hillary was president and she was running for a second term and she ended up losing to Trump, and then she came out and said, well, I didn't really lose. The election was rigged because of Russia. But ultimately, she decides to step down. What would be the difference? What would be the difference? Because that's exactly what Trump did. So what Kaitlan Collins is trying to do here, she's being disingenuous. She's trying to basically say that, well, the difference between Republicans and Democrats is that Democrats never had a president try to hold on to power. But again, Democrats, all of their presidents were termed out. Like, they won their elections, right, when they were actually in office, okay? But when you talk about the difference between what Democrats did in Congress versus what Republicans did in Congress, there is fundamentally no difference whatsoever at all, because they all have a right to contest the election in Congress before the vice president certifies it. They have a right to do that. But now all of a sudden they want to pretend that, oh, no, you can't do that. It's wrong to do that. And trying to say, well, it's not the same. Democrats doing it is not the same as Republicans doing it. When it's the exact same thing. And they made the exact same claims. And it's the exact same outcome. A peaceful transfer of power is what ultimately ended up happening. So again, what Kaitlan Collins is talking about is nonsense.
So A, we did have a peaceful transfer of power. I was there on January 20th. I was there on the swearing in.
Barely.
B, if you look at in 2000, Democrats went to the Senate, or 2001, Democrats went to the Senate floor and objected to George W. Bush. In 2004, they went and objected.
And what did the president do?
In 2016, Democrats went and objected to Donald Trump. And so... Look,
and what happened in 2016? Because I remember a guy named Joe Biden was vice president, and he went to the Senate floor and certified the votes.
So do you
Am I wrong?
And what did Mike Pence do? Did Mike Pence not do the same thing? Right? That's what really, it bothers me, because it's almost like, again, what effectively is the difference? What is the difference? Because you can't say that, well, in 2016, there was no political violence. Well, there was political violence. After Trump won, there was political violence. People were rioting in the street as the mainstream liberal media and Hillary Clinton were boo-hoo-whining, crying, Russia, 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 right? Hillary Clinton talking about how the election wasn't fair, okay? She claimed it was stolen from her. And then on Inauguration Day, you had riots and protests in D.C. on Inauguration Day. But again, why is it that the mainstream liberal media, why did they never bring this up? Why is it that they forgot about the fact that there were riots in D.C. against Trump on Inauguration Day? Why is it that they don't ever talk about that? Why is it that they never talk about the riots and the violence that happened in D.C. on Trump's Inauguration Day? The violence and riots that happened after Trump was elected, while the mainstream liberal media and Hillary Clinton were actively denying the results of the election, claiming that it was Russia, saying that he's illegitimate. It's almost as if Democrats and the mainstream liberal media started this. Right? It's almost as if they paved the way for something like this to happen in 2020, because they set the precedent that this is okay. It's okay to commit acts of violence and to deny elections when you lose, because that's what they did in 2016. Again, hypocrisy is stunning. This is why these people make me sick. This is why this conversation makes me sick, because these people just pretend as if Democrats have never done anything like this before, and it's just not true.
You're asking, will you promise no matter what to agree an election is illegitimate regardless of what happens? And that would be an absurd thing to claim. Like, we have an entire election law system that people challenge elections. Elections get overturned. Voter fraud gets proven. That happens all the time. And the media engages in this weird game post Donald Trump that you insist no voter fraud has ever existed. Why does every state have laws in place to challenge voter fraud if it occurs?
The media
Why do you have election challenges?
This isn't a game. There was.
Oh, it's 100% a game. And he's right. They all have the right as sitting members of Congress to challenge the results of the election. You guys had no problem with these members of Congress exercising their power to do this when Democrats lost, right? When they lose, it's totally fine for them to do it. You don't have a problem with it. You only have a problem with it when Republicans do it, right? And again, this is something that is unique to what happened after 2020. Now, all of a sudden, you have an issue with it. So it's 100% a game. And you don't ever ask Democrats about it. You don't ever hold Democrats to the same standard that you hold Republicans to. And that's the problem. So it 100% is a game. 100%.
There's no widespread voter fraud.
You only ask Republicans that.
Because it was Republicans who tried to block the transition of power. You have to acknowledge that. So we've never seen it on a scale of what happened in 2020, and we've never seen the president refuse. He wouldn't even let Joe Biden get classified briefings at the beginning. I recall that. So my question for you again, free and fair election, will you accept the results regardless of who wins?
Look, if the Democrats win, I will accept the result, but I'm not going to ignore fraud regardless of what happens.
But was there fraud in 2020?
Of course there was fraud in 2020.
No, there wasn't, and you still objected.
You know for a fact there was zero voter fraud. Really? What's your basis for that? Show me your evidence.
We've spoken with Governor Kemp. They did 3 hand recounts in the state of Georgia. The director of CISA said that it was the safest, most legitimate election.
But you're saying zero voter fraud occurred. That's what you just said.
You know, it's almost amazing how these people, their narrative changes based off who wins, right? In 2016, oh, well, Russia hacked our elections, right? In 2020, all of a sudden, when Trump loses, oh, well, these are the safest elections ever. And if you question the outcome of the election, then you're an election denier. Again, it's amazing. And I'm telling you what's going to happen in 2024, guys. You're going to see the same thing. If Trump wins, oh, Russia hacked the election, right? But if Trump loses, it was the safest election ever. This is how they operate. This is what they do. But again, it is a ridiculous question to ask a sitting congressman, hey, you're going to accept the election results no matter what, right? Well, that is a silly question, because if you legitimately believe there's fraud, if you legitimately believe that the results aren't fair or that the election wasn't conducted lawfully, then you have a right and you have mechanisms in place to contest it. But to ask a congressman to accept the results no matter what is silly. Because again, number one, they don't ask Democrats this question, right? Even though, again, Democrats deny every election they lose, and there's violence committed on behalf of Democrats when they lose, right? But they don't ask Democrats about it, right? Are you guys going to make sure there's no violence from your side of the aisle if Joe Biden loses? They don't ever ask that question. But that's a very legitimate question to ask. But again, what's not a legitimate question is, well, are you going to accept the outcome no matter what? Again, which would assume that, well, you're going to accept the outcome even if you think that the election was fraudulent, which Ted Cruz is not obligated to do as a congressman. You're not obligated to just accept the outcome if you believe that the election is fraudulent. A more legitimate question would have been, if you can't prove that widespread voter fraud affected the outcome of the election, will you accept the election results? That would have been an appropriate question, right? That would have been a legitimate question to ask. But to ask him the question of, is he going to accept it no matter what happens, regardless of if there's fraud, right, in the election, whether or not it was lawfully conducted, doesn't matter. You just got to accept it. Again, that's asinine. It's ludicrous. I don't even understand why she would ask a question like that. Again, you would think that as a journalist, she would be able to, again, ask a more legitimate question than that. That's not a legitimate question to ask a sitting congressman.
Nothing that would have changed the outcome of that
Okay, but that's
election.
A different statement.
But no, it's not. Because
yes,
if it wouldn't have
is.
changed
You said there was no voter fraud.
There was no voter fraud that would have changed the outcome of the election, and you know that, Senator.
So what I know is that what I stood on the Senate floor and objected, what I called for, I'll tell you, I wrestled with what to do in that circumstance. And the reason I wrestled with it is because I think there was significant voter fraud in 2020. And
you wanted the 10-day commission, I know, but was there voter fraud that would have changed the outcome of the election? But do you know why I wanted a 10-day commission? Because I tried to look, I'm a Supreme Court litigator. I argue cases in front of the Supreme Court. I know.
I tried to look through history and precedent, and the best precedent I could find was the election of 1876. 1876 was between Rutherford B. Hayes and Samuel Tilden. And what happened there were serious allegations of voter fraud, and Congress didn't throw its hands up and say, you know what? CNN demanded that I accept the results no matter what, so ignore the fraud. I got to go. But hold on. What did Congress do in 1876? What did Congress do in 1876?
How did the president handle it?
What did Congress do in 1876?
Senator, I have to know, you can't answer yes or no to this question.
I'm asking a question. What did Congress do in 1876?
You can't answer yes or no to this question. And Republicans,
can you answer my question? Why are you refusing to answer my question?
I'm conducting the interview with all due respect, Senator. And let me ask you, it's Republicans have twisted themselves in knots. It's just a yes or no question.
I'm not twisting myself. I'm answering your question. You just don't like my answer.
And what's your answer? Is it yes or is it no?
So in 1876, what Congress did is it appointed an election commission. It consisted of 15 people. 5 House members, 5 senators, 5 Supreme Court justices. The Election Commission was charged with studying the evidence and making a determination of what voter fraud occurred, and that determined the winner. And what I called for in 2020 was to do the same thing, appoint an election commission, and 11 senators joined me.
Senator, with all due respect, after it had been thrown out of many courts, after the Attorney General Bill Barr, because there was no basis for those court cases.
No, so that's actually
Senator,
not.
With all due respect,
you asked me a question. Do you want me to answer it?
And you didn't answer the question.
Yes, I did.
Dozens of court cases were thrown out.
Hold on a second.
The Attorney General said there was no widespread fraud. You're not clearly answering the question. I want to thank you for that.
I'm answering every question. I think the country would have been a lot better off with a determination of what evidence of voter fraud there was that occurred, and instead the media didn't want to hear it and insists voter fraud never occurs. You ought to go back and look at the Carter-Baker Commission.
It was the Attorney General, and my question was about
it was the media. It was CNN that relentlessly pushed that propaganda. And by the way,
never propaganda? That there was no widespread fraud in the election?
That voter fraud doesn't exist, and anyone who says it does is wearing a tinfoil hat. That is propaganda. And by the way, you never asked Hillary Clinton this. You never asked Stacey Abrams this. You never asked Al Gore this.
With all due respect,
and every
Senator,
one of them said the Republicans who won were illegitimate.
I haven't had any of them on my show. We'll talk to them. But I don't remember there being a president who was refusing to turn over the transition of power and facilitate in it.
And Trump didn't either. Joe Biden became president. My question was about
2024. You did not answer it.
Let me say a final point for you. You said they haven't come.
Thank you very much, Senator Ted Cruz.
My opponent, Colin Allred, hasn't either. He ought to come to your show.
Senator Ted Cruz, no answer to that question. Thank you very much. Much more on that interview and what we touched on.
Well, he did answer the question. You just don't like the answer, right? And, it's just funny because Ted Cruz has a point about transparency in the sense that the media try to pretend like no voter fraud ever occurs in an election. And if you question the outcome of the election, then you're a tinfoil hat, wearing individual. That to me does more to stoke distrust in the outcome of elections, especially when, again, there's a lot of hypocrisy where the media peddled these claims that Russia affected the outcome of the 2016 election, that Trump was illegitimate. When they peddled these claims, they let Democrats come on their airways and to say this stuff and didn't push back, did not correct them and say, no, Trump was lawfully elected. He is legitimately the president of the United States. When we see the clear hypocrisy, right, the difference based off who wins and who loses, you lose credibility, right? And I think that's ultimately what makes people upset. And I think that's the point that Ted Cruz was making. I think what he was saying is that, listen, what we needed after the 2020 election was more transparency, right? We needed to put it all out there, put all the claims out there in the open for people to see, okay? And then we can hash it out in regards to what's legit and what's not legit. But to just pretend like all the claims are false and that there's no legitimacy to it, again, that is what makes it so people get angry and upset, and they don't trust the outcome because of the systemic effort to essentially sweep all claims under the rug, while at the same time, again, if Democrats had lost and they started making their claims, Russia, okay, they start making the voter fraud claims, which they do when they lose, the media would have treated it as if it was legitimate, right? They would not have just swept it under the rug. They would have asked serious questions. They would have done serious journalism and serious investigation into the claims rather than just dismissing it off the cuff. And again, I think that's the point that Ted Cruz was trying to make, that he really couldn't because Kaitlan Collins didn't want to let him speak, even though she claimed that I'm the one interviewing you. Well, if you are interviewing Ted Cruz, then you should let him speak. You should let him talk. But again, she didn't really like the points that he was making. She didn't like the fact that he was bringing up how this type of stuff has been handled historically, okay? Because she wants her viewers to believe that, there's nothing that can be done except to sweep it under the rug and to dismiss all the claims, right? And to smear anybody who believes anything differently than we do, right? Again, it's absolutely amazing. But again, this is what the media is doing, because what they want to do is to play up January 6th and the 2020 election in 2024. So they're asking all these Republicans the same question, and Republicans should always turn the questions back around on them and say, why are you not asking the Democrats about this? Are you asking Democrats the same question? There was violence committed as a result of Democrats losing in 2016. Democrats denied the elections in 2016. Why are you not asking them the same thing? Why are you not holding them to the same standard? If election denialism is wrong from Republicans, then it's wrong from Democrats. Until you hold Democrats to the same standard. In fact, I would say go even further. Roll me the clip. Roll me some clips of you asking Democrats the same question. I want to see clips. Until you start asking them the same question, I'm not going to answer the question. I'm not going to talk about it because you got to hold them to the same standard. Until you start holding them to the same standard, this is not a topic that I'm going to discuss because I don't have to. And that's exactly what they should start doing. Take it up to another level. If they want to play this game, just say, okay, cool. Well, roll me some clips of Democrats answering this question, of you asking Democrats these same questions. And when you do that, then I will talk about it and I'll answer the question. But if you can't roll me clips, if you can't prove to me that you are asking Democrats these same questions, then I'm not going to answer the question because I'm not going to be held to a standard that you're not holding them to. Period. That's it. That's all you got to do. That's all you got to do. That's what they should start doing. So again, I like the fact that Republicans are turning it back around on the liberal media and asking them, why are you not asking Democrats the same question? But again, they should turn it up a notch. They should ask for proof. Demand proof. Are you asking Democrats the same question? You got to show me proof. Until you show me proof, I'm not having this conversation. That's exactly what you should do. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.